Alright, I'm going to try something a little different this time around. I'm going to be recording videos as I make progress on the project so you guys get a feeling of like the bugs and other things I've had to deal with along the way. Because usually some of the most entertaining parts of programming are the bugs themselves and how they got fixed.
This next clip is after I updated to Godot 4. Should have mentioned that.
Alright, so this is the very first version of the game that actually builds. As you can see, every single UI element is broken. In fact, might as well full screen it, because previously I wouldn't do that, because as you can see, it stretches out the bar at the bottom, but I mean, it's broken anyway, so I'll have to fix it later. I managed to get the camera movement working, and the environmental colors are also changed, because they use a new environment node, which looks quite nice. But yeah, let's see. Here is our current pawns and how they look. You might notice that their hat is broken. They also have these axes. So the reason you haven't seen these axes before is because they're basically my debug axes. I just use them to see how... It's like I just used a single-bladed weapon so I could tell which way the model was looking, so to speak. And this guy is Tokyo drifting everywhere. Wait a minute. Oh, wait, I can actually fix that part. Hold on. That would be... Yeah. Okay, I guess we just lock all those then. Alright, let's try this again. Alright, so spawn a little guy. Whoop, that's a train dummy. But it's a good place to demonstrate that the damage and animation still seem to be working well, which is nice. The health bars are both gray, and they're backwards, but you can still see them fill and empty, so I've clearly got a lot of cleaning up to do.
Alright, I have not been dating these, but this one is dated. It's currently June 9th. The Godot 4 update has been completed. The refactoring afterwards has also been completed. And I also have been writing up some documentation and just in general getting the project ready for open source. Really nothing interesting to show gameplay-wise. No interesting debugs either, just me squashing code, cleaning things up. I do, however, have an issue that I like to bring up. It's actually my first issue with Godot, and I knew I'd run into a couple of these, but this is definitely an issue I have with how Godot is structured, so it warrants talking about, at least how Godot is structured in regards to its C# integration. So let's get into it. I'll be talking about memory leaks in a second, so here's a quick explanation for what those are. Basically, when a program is created by the system gives it some RAM and system resources to start off with. The program then uses this RAM to allocate a bunch of objects. The program also maintains pointers or references to these objects. And an object can have a bunch of references, as many as you want, doesn't matter. The issue comes though with that objects, in order for me to create a second reference to an object, it needs to first have a reference. I need to already know where it is. So that means that if I have an object that has only one measly reference to it, and then for whatever reason that reference gets deleted, I can no longer access that object. It's just gone. It's memory leaked. It's been sucked into the void. And when you have a program that consistently produces these objects that don't have a reference to them, you'll be leaking a lot of memory. Which means that now the program's memory is being filled up with a bunch of useless junk. So it's going to start needing more RAM. How does it get more RAM? Well, it goes back to the system and it says, hey, what's up, buddy? I love to eat RAM. Give me more RAM. The system will say, yep, sure. Here, have more RAM. And this will continue with the RAM filling up once more, and then the program requesting yet more RAM. And the cycle will continue to spin until finally the system itself is out of RAM to give, at which point the cycle breaks and the program usually immediately crashes or becomes super slow once it is out of RAM. Bad things happen. Programs don't like to be out of RAM. So I'd like to avoid being out of RAM. In fact, I'd like to avoid memory leaks altogether. I know, hot opinion. Last thing I should mention is that several programming languages, such as C#, Java, and JavaScript, have garbage collectors. Garbage collectors go, and they'll go over to these nodes here's my garbage collector. And the garbage collector will, as described, take all this garbage and destroy it. No more garbage. Which goes ahead and frees up RAM, like so. And then I don't have to request more RAM, and life is good. And for the record, there's also languages that don't have garbage collectors, like C, C++, and Rust. And these are no garbage collector. Because the garbage collector is a little slow, and if you're good at programming, well, I shouldn't say if you're good at programming, if you're willing to spend a lot of time dealing with references, you can operate without it. Now, unfortunately, Godot has me in a situation where I might have to manage memory with C# and such because its garbage collector does not want to play nice with the Godot garbage collector. Or, sorry, not the Godot garbage collector. I don't think Godot has a garbage collector. If it does, it's definitely not working for me. So, yeah, the C's garbage collector doesn't want to play nice with the Godot scene tree, and we're running into some issues. This is the Godot scene tree. It's nice, it's lovely. We define all our meshes here, as well as navigation meshes, pawns, like physics elements, like collider boxes. It's pretty great. But if you want to make a full game, or at least a game as complex as mine, you're going to have to dip into a lot of scripting. And that happens over in the C# world. And in the C# world, you know, like a little dashed line here. In the C# world, I have a bunch of classes, which are these little circles, which are kind of more like bags, but classes. And these classes, they'll take the nodes. So let's say this guy, he takes like a triangle. Maybe this guy, he creates a square or a circle. He creates a square. He creates another square. And they'll sit there and they'll like swap out the nodes between them. But the important part is that for a time, they are storing the nodes within the C# world. And the issue comes that when the garbage collector for C# comes around. So let's say garbage collector comes in here and he garbage collects this class. The issue with that is all of the nodes inside, those are all mem-leaked. So yeah, the C# garbage collector doesn't automatically reclaim nodes that are inside of C# classes. That's fine. I didn't expect that to be the case. I was just hoping that would be the case. It'd be really convenient, but I'm sure for a number of reasons that's not possible. Fine, whatever. It'll be more than okay. So my next idea is pulling from my experience in C++. They have these things called deconstructors. And what a deconstructor does is it's the opposite of a constructor. So a constructor is called when an item is created. A deconstructor is called when an object goes out of scope. At least in C++. In C#, we have a finalizer. And the finalizer, I thought, also gets called at end of class. Or not end of class, at the end of scope. But that turns out to not be the case, actually. Which is a little frustrating, but the idea with the finalizer would be that when we have a C# class, let's see, say this is another C# class. It's wonderful, it's great. The idea with the finalizer is that when the class goes out of scope, the finalizer would then look at the nodes within the class, and it would quickly check to see if they're still in the scene tree, and if they aren't, then the finalizer itself can free up the nodes, thus solving my issue. Unfortunately, there's still issues with this. The biggest one, and this is a wrinkle I haven't mentioned yet, is that the bridge between this world, the Godot world, and the C# world is managed by C# classes. We'll put them right on the line here. These are C# classes, but they also act as nodes and exist within the scene tree. Now that's all right and dandy, but unfortunately that seems to stop the C# finalizer from ever running. So these guys have no access to the finalizer. That's really frustrating. Now the alternative is I could try to just eliminate all of these C# classes that are also Godot nodes, Godot nodes. That's not a perfect solution though, because unfortunately, I do need these nodes to communicate back and forth between Godot and C#. I think trying to eliminate, because I've got several of these throughout my class. Pretty much any time I need to interact with the Godot scene tree, and I also need to interact inside of the wonderful C# world that I have known and loved, I need to have one of these nodes. Like Pawn Controller is one of these, I think. Pawn Visuals is also one of these. Item is also... Is Item on these? I'm not sure. But a lot of classes. And the other issue with that is, let's say even if I did, let's say I somehow magically figure out a way that I don't need this bridge anymore. So there's no more classes that exist on the horizon in between Godot and C#. The other issue is that if you look at the description of finalizers, unlike deconstructors, which as far as I know are very commonly used in C++, they're great, everyone loves them, they make sense, finalizers are not. Finalizers are not called when something goes out of scope, and that might seem like a pretty minor issue, like where I say, oh, you know, there's a couple more smaller complications, and then you can really ignore them. No. I can't ignore them, unfortunately. The finalizer has a lot of issues in that it might not run. It might run at weird times. What else? It might... Not only that, but in order for it to run, in order for a finalizer to run, first the garbage collector runs. The garbage collector sees that an object has a finalizer, and then it adds the finalizer to the finalizer queue. So let's say over here, we'll have like a finalizer queue. This is our little finalizer thread. Finalizer queue. And in order for something to run, we add something onto the finalizer queue. And the issue is that the garbage collector does that only when it runs. So basically, it can take a while, like quite a bit of time, for the finalizer to actually run after the item goes out of scope. And not only that, what greatly concerns me is that if you go on the interwebs, such on like Stack Overflow or like on various like blogs that I've seen, people really hate the finalizer. It's not something that they like. They recommend against it at all costs. So I'd rather not bet the future of the project on using the finalizer. So what do I do then? If I don't have access to anything, if I don't have access to the finalizer, if I don't have access to the garbage collection, what do I do? Well, I'll just handle things the old-fashioned way, unfortunately, where I just have to manually keep track. Manually keep track of ownership of references, of which nodes are, which ones need to be deleted, which one's free. It requires a lot of brain power, more than I'd like to use, honestly, because I try to conserve my brain power for fun things like, I don't know, other coding projects, I guess. A big issue with handling things manually is that unlike C++, which was built to handle things manually, C# isn't, so I'm missing out on a lot of classes that exist in C# that don't exist, classes that exist in C++ for manual memory management that don't exist in C#. So that's going to be very frustrating. It's like I don't have access to like unique pointers, weak pointers, all this other kind of stuff, which I mean, granted, I don't fully understand because I've never used a project that messed around with them in C++. I've only done very small things. But it's my understanding is that they are quite useful, and I wish C# had them. So it's a bit of an open question. I don't have any answers. If anyone else has a better answer for how I can handle memory management in Godot without using massive cerebral functioning while I'm programming other things, that'd be real great and much appreciated. That's all I really have for progress. Some of you might be wondering if I have any thoughts on Godot 4. I'm sorry to say I don't really. I updated Godot 4. Everything broke. I fixed it. Godot 4, it runs faster. I haven't really gotten to dig into any of its additional features yet, and when I do dig into the additional features, I'll probably forget that they were Godot 4 exclusive anyway. Although, obviously, I'm massively thankful to the entire Godot community for providing me with this excellent game engine, and sure, someday I'll go back and work on it when this project needs some engine updates. Oh, speaking of the project, though, this project is now open source. Yes, at the time of this video, I am now actually creating full open source software. It's no longer closed source because I want to have full control over how it's coded. No, it's now open source. I worked to the best degree on documentation and fixing everything up, so hopefully that's all readable. If you guys need any help contributing, feel free to send me a message on Discord. I created a wonderful little Discord group. Right now, just consists of me. So hopefully some other people join. And for the future plans, first and foremost, I'll be making a functional user experience that'll include the debug menu, that'll include any other UI elements I need to just get more information about the game rather than just pawns running around constantly. And in the future, for plans, I was planning to go make traits and do more back-end changes, and I think I've since realized I'll eventually burn myself out on that, and no one wants to join me because my program has no proofs of concept, so instead I'm going to try to emulate Majesty, because I pretty much have everything in place. All I have to do to emulate Majesty now is create spawners, which is super easy, like monster layers, the monster layers. They're just areas that produce a monster occasionally. I have to implement stores and buildings, which is also pretty straightforward under the framework I have. Make leveling, that's super easy. It's just a bunch of small changes, and once I have that background, I can go and pretty easily make an archer, make a rogue. Require me to go back to Blender. It's terrible fate for me. I'd rather not go back to Blender, but if I have to, I have to. I'll sit down and try my hardest and make an archer, and I'll make a rogue, and I'll make a knight, and etc. And I'll try to make this game look playable, make it look fun, and then hopefully attract a bit more of an audience. Or, I might just return to my cave and implement traits and some other back-end stuff. We'll see what happens. I am just doing this for fun, after all. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.